Hello, lovely people. Great to have you back with me for another fascinating interview. We're back on board with the old scintillating chats. In a minute, we're going to meet a man who needs no introduction from me. He makes us sit up and take notice. Well, he does me anyway. He's insightful, he's funny, he's angry, and why wouldn't he be? In a minute, we're going to meet a man on a mission to get us thinking, get us angry, crying with laughter. He does all of that. But before we sit down with him, I want to let you know how you can help support this channel. God knows I need all the help I can get. Go to patreon.com, find me by name, part with a little bit of cash, sign up, join the family. You get early access to all my content. You get exclusive access to some content, including a question and answer video every week. Details are down there somewhere. Okay, now it's time to meet one of the most intelligent and engaging commentators I know. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again for another conversation. My guest today is Jimmy Dore, familiar, well known to most of you, I think and hope, comedian, more recently podcaster. I count him as a friend, a good friend of mine. Jimmy has always struck a chord for me because in many ways his trajectory has reminded me of my own, in that he stumbled into all of this almost by accident and finds himself saying things that other people have been disinclined to say and to take part in conversations other people are disinclined to have. So on that note, thank you again for joining me, Jimmy.
My pleasure. Great to see you as always.
If we get right into it, I saw you recently talking about and commenting upon President Donald Trump remarking that Giuliani, the man in charge in Syria now, remarking that he had found him to be a handsome young guy with a strong past. And as I've looked on and understood Giuliani to be a butcher and an employer of butchers, I wondered, he's being welcomed everywhere, Giuliani. He wears the suit now and the big watch. I wonder what you thought of President Trump making those comments about him.
Well, it was certainly disappointing, to say the least. It reveals a lot more than most people, I think, our brains can actually comprehend. And what it actually means is that the United States has been in, Hillary Clinton said years ago that we invented Al Qaeda, and and what people don't know is that we've been working with Al Qaeda. Barack Obama's program called Timber Sycamore, which was a covert program led by the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad in Syria. We funded Al Qaeda to do that, so we're supposed to be fighting Al Qaeda because they're supposedly the ones who did 9/11. And turns out that we've been in bed and working with them hand in hand all along. And I don't think most people in America anyway are ready to wrap their brain around that idea that exactly as Tulsi Gabbard said in 2017, 2018, 2019, exactly as we said at this show, and many others said that if you get rid of Bashar al-Assad, who's going to take over? Al Qaeda is going to take over, and that's exactly who's taken over. And now Giuliani has changed his name, so he's not, and he's taken off his jihadist gear, and he's wearing a Brooks Brothers suit, and so now we're supposed to not connect him to his past. There was a $10 million bounty on his head from the CIA. From the State Department in the United States because he was a terrorist. He was #1 terrorist. And now he's, Trump loves him. And it was a big deep state game all along. And and now he wants to work. He wants to be part of the Abraham Accords. He wants to work with Israel. I thought they were supposed to be sworn enemies, but it's interesting that ISIS and Al Qaeda never attack Israel for some reason. And I think it's pretty obvious. So these people were propped up. They were funded. They're not only they're a tool. They're not the enemy of the CIA or the deep state. They're a partner, and that's what this all reveals. And this was why did they want to get rid of Assad in the same? Right now he's slaughtering Christians in Syria. We all know that, and nobody talks about it in the Western press. Just it's really disappointing, I guess, to summarize it. It's disappointing, but it's also revealing. And that, the United States is a mafia state. It's run by the war machine and criminals. And the reason why we wanted to overthrow Bashar al-Assad, among many other reasons, is for the oil and natural resources. And I'm going to bet there's going to be a pipeline that goes through there that competes with Russian energy.
You're saying disappointing. Absolutely. I find, because I've come, late in the game to the big picture, and for me, there is something, especially sordid about what's happened in Syria. In that it seems to be rubbed in our faces that the place is being balkanized. Israel's in there. The US is in there. Turkey's got a hand in it. There's open slaughter of Alawite minority people, slaughter of Christians. It's all happening in front of us. No one's really even bothering meaningfully to deny it. President Trump applauds, as a handsome young guy with a strong past, the preeminent figure there. And I just, with a sense of mounting despair and desolation, I wonder what we, as the audience that are paying attention to it, are supposed to understand. What are we being told here? If an Al Qaeda ISIS butcher has only to play ball, don the suit, and is to be welcomed into the fold, what are you and I being told?
What we're being told is that we're all suckers and that we all put up with it, and that the Syrian war was never about what it appeared to be about. Just like we've said all along, you can't trust the mainstream establishment press. You can't trust the corporate news to tell you the truth, just as much as you can't trust the government. The biggest liars in the world are the government. The second biggest liars are the corporate news, and far distant are randos on social media. So what we're being told is that it's the same old story. The United States has been setting the Middle East on fire, and since at least 9/11 and before that. And every war is not what it seems, and war is a racket. And we are the terrorists. I've been saying that for a while. We are the terrorists, and right now you're seeing we're funding the biggest terrorist act that's in the Middle East right now, which is the slaughter of the people in Gaza. And everybody, even the mainstream press, can't ignore it anymore. And I don't. People wonder, hey, how did Hitler happen? How could Holocaust happen? Well, you're watching it happen. A very similar thing happen right now, and this is how it happens. And so, while there are some bright spots with Donald Trump's foreign policy, there's also a lot of darkness, and of course, there's a genocide happening in Gaza, and we're in bed with Al Qaeda. I mean, the whole point, the whole way the United people don't know. The United States Congress are the only body in the United States that can declare war. The president cannot declare; the Congress does, right? But they've usurped that power since 9/11. They've given the president a thing called the AUMF, the Authorization for the Use of Military Force. And that means the president doesn't have to go get approval from Congress to go bomb another country. All they have to do is say, I'm fighting Al Qaeda or I'm fighting terrorism. Ever since 9/11, and then they can now bomb. That's how we could bomb Libya. That's how we did Syria, spent 20 years in Afghanistan, Somalia, Yemen. All the bombing and all the killing that we've been doing over the last 20 years has been under the authorization for use of military force, under the guise of we're fighting Al Qaeda, the people who did 9/11. Well, it turns out we've actually been working with those same people. We've been funding those people. We've been in bed with those people. So all these wars have been a ruse. They've been a racket. They've been a lie. And nobody in the United States is going to be upset about it because the man on the TV doesn't tell them to be upset. They're only upset about what the man on the TV tells them about. Still to this day. They still turn to the same people we know lied to them about the Iraq war, for sure. Everybody knows that. Lied to them about Russiagate, lied to them about COVID, lied to them about Joe Biden being demented for 4 years straight. Everybody knows that. And they still go back to the same people to get their news from this. And so that's why I hate to be a pessimist, but it doesn't look good for the future of the Western world, I'll tell you that.
I mean, it goes all the way back in a way. Woodrow Wilson in the First World War, where he campaigned as the president who would keep America out of the war, and then he got the White House, and then shortly thereafter, the cunning form of words that he probably got from Edward Mandell House, this mysterious, the Colonel figure, but he just declared that a state of war now existed between America and the Axis powers. So he didn't go through Congress, in that way that you described, to go through the process. He just said a state of war exists between us. It's already happened. We're already at war. I didn't even have to declare it. But to me, Jimmy, it's like the bit in the movie. It's like the bit in the thriller where the kidnapper takes his mask off, and the person who's been kidnapped realizes, because I can see this person's face, that means I'm not going home, because I can identify this person. And it's a significant moment for the audience, obviously, when they realize that the extremity of the circumstances in which the kidnapped person now finds himself. And it feels to me as though our captors, so to speak, have taken the mask off, because they don't care that we can see them, because, as it were, we're not going home. We're not going back to the way things were. We're where we are now, and that's it. It feels to me that we've hit a very significant point in our relationship with our captors, where they've told us something profound, which is, you're in the future now, and you might as well stop thinking about the world you used to know and the life you used to live, because it's not there anymore.
And, in the United States, people continuously fall into this trap of left versus right, Republican versus Democrat. They think that is, they identify with a team. And so this team is bad. Now that team's good. That team's bad. This team's good. And they're doing it right now. Right. So people are saying, oh, the Democrats ruined everything. The Democrats and the Republicans work for the exact same people. The donor class and the handful of billionaires that actually run everything in the Western world, they all work together. They don't hate each other. They work together. They all have shared interests, and they all own our politicians. And so right now, I just watched last night, I watched an interview with the new FBI director and the deputy director, Kash Patel and Don Bongino, who swore that they couldn't wait to get into power so they could tell the truth about the Jeffrey Epstein episode. And Jeffrey Epstein, as everyone knows, working for the Mossad, he was there to do honeypot operations to get compromising, to get blackmail on powerful people. And they did it. And so now they're in power. And they just said that, and Jeffrey Epstein was killed in prison, in the most secure prison in the country. He was on suicide watch, the most high profile prisoner in the country. Somehow, the camera that was on his cell got disconnected. The two guards who were supposed to watch him fell asleep, and then he killed himself. And so now the FBI director and the deputy FBI director now say on national television, yeah, I looked at the report. He definitely killed himself. And so we're not getting the truth about anything. They all work for the same people. They all work for whoever Jeffrey Epstein was working for. A lot of people say it was Mossad. Matt Gaetz said it was a foreign country, and that's why he's not the attorney general, right? Because he actually would tell the truth about Israel. He actually would tell the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. He would tell the truth about AIPAC and the control of the Israeli lobby on our government. So those people. So again, it's depressing. It's disappointing. You're right. The mask is off. They're doing it right in our face. And so people still people get caught up in the United States identifying with a party, a right Republican Party or a Democrat Party. And I've been saying since 2016, it's the same party. Donald Trump was a bit of a disruptor to that. They were afraid of him because he didn't come up through the normal ranks of control of the billionaire class, so they couldn't control him 100%. But it looks like that's all over with. And so, again, it's a very mixed bag. There's some positives from Donald Trump, like he does seem to be less willing to do war. But again, we're not going to find out the truth about Jeffrey Epstein. We're not going to find out the truth about who really controls our government and who really controls our intelligence agencies and who really is controlling our wars. As this, Donald Trump's praise of Jelani. Well, he changed his name, by the way. It's not Jelani anymore. I guess maybe he converted to Islam. Maybe that's why he changed his name. I don't know.
As I understand it, even those who have seen the pathologists' reports on people in confinement who managed to end their lives that way, by sitting on the floor with something tied around their neck, tied to something above them. I think I'm right in saying that Jeffrey Epstein is almost unique in having managed to break his neck in the way that he did. Even people who've seen bona fide suicides under those circumstances, I think I'm right in saying that Epstein is the only person to have managed to break his neck in precisely the way that he did in that high security prison with cameras, with security guards asleep at the wheel. So it's, the extent of it is so brazen, I would say, be it Keir Starmer in Britain, Emmanuel Macron in France, whoever, Donald Trump. I don't think their feet aren't on the pedals. So they only appear to be driving. They only appear to be in control. And they're not, because they can't be.
Here we are 4.5, 5 months into Donald Trump's presidency, and we have the CDC and the FDA still recommending COVID shots for children, for babies. I don't know what the hell we voted for. I don't know what is going on. It's the same people are in control. The same people are in charge. And seems like we're just kind of, it's just around the edges that we can have any kind of real change. I mean, it seems criminal. It doesn't seem criminal. It is criminal. The whole COVID thing was a crime against humanity. And the fact that there's still the COVID shot is on the schedule for babies is an evil. And we're living in, and again, like you said, Chris Hedges has said they lie, cheat, and steal. They do it right out in the public. They don't even try to hide it anymore. So I'll never forget Trump's first term. It used to be you had to catch the people in power meeting with the oil companies or meeting and try to see that they were being bribed. Well, Donald Trump put the head of Exxon right as the Secretary of State. Like there wasn't any 1 degree of separation anymore. There was just, okay, we're just going to take the guy from the oil company, why we've been doing the wars, and we're just going to put him right in charge of the wars. We're just going to put him at the head of the State Department. So it's, I can't believe that our empire still is happening. I mean, we are going to end like every empire ends. We're completely overextending ourselves. We have over 800, 900 military bases, probably 1,000 because a lot of those military bases are secret. And that's how all empires end. We don't invest in our own country right now. We have half the country can't afford a $500 emergency, and 80% of workers live paycheck to paycheck in the richest country in the world. And we're 20 to 30 years behind China. We've spent $30 billion in California to build a high-speed train, and we haven't laid 1 foot of track. I mean, it's just bad. And we just had half of Los Angeles burned down, and at the same time, they drained the reservoir right above the Pacific Palisades, which had 115 million gallons of water. We have broken down fire trucks. We have fire hydrants that don't operate during a fire, and everybody just accepts this as normal, as okay. There isn't a revolution brewing in the United States, which is exactly what we need, a real revolution. And without that, I think we're over. But exactly, Donald Trump, he made a lot of noise about how he's going to get the waste, fraud, and abuse out of our government. He's going to save us hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's what Doge and Elon Musk was all about. And then as soon as he says, we found $160 billion in savings from fraud, waste, and abuse. Oh, by the way, we're going to not save that money. We're going to give all that money and more to the Pentagon, to the war machine. So we're not cutting any of that money. So none of that money is being cut, but we will cut your health care. So now they're going to try and cut $1 trillion from people's health care over the next 10 years. We're doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing. We have the worst of all worlds. We have tax cuts for the wealthy, which is what he's doing. And he's cutting essential services and health care for not just poor people, but the working people who can't afford healthcare in America. Half the country's already on government run paid for healthcare, Medicare and Medicaid, and that's how we paid twice as much in the United States for our healthcare than the rest of the world. What I mean by twice as much is 100% more than the rest of the world. That's what we pay in the United States, and people go bankrupt when they get sick, and we have worse outcomes than anywhere else in the Western world. So we're ending like all empires, and people. I feel like I have this impetus. I don't know, like I have this rage about it, but it is it doesn't have any power behind it. It's impotent. It's an impotent rage. And a lot of people say I woke them up, but it doesn't seem like anybody's really organizing a real revolution, and no one's really. It's the same thing keeps happening over and over, and there's no better proof of it than Donald Trump praising an Al Qaeda leader who's in charge of Syria right now. Donald Trump not cutting off the money to a genocidal regime, Benjamin Netanyahu in Gaza, and they're cutting our own healthcare by $1 trillion in the United States. And the FBI director is saying Jeffrey Epstein actually did kill himself. So, meet the new boss, same as the old boss, and everything's a racket. And the United States and Israel are the terrorists. There's nobody even comes close to the body count that the United States and Israel's had in the last 20 years.
Don't you think, though, that there must be something, if not positive, there must be something that's at least indicative of a change of wind direction somewhere? That I grew up persuaded, really, that Israel were just the good guys. That Israel was just out there pluckily defending itself in a situation against all comers, and it was surrounded by enemies. One way or another, on account of what's happened since October 7, I know about Nakba. I know about what the Palestinians describe as the catastrophe that befell them after 1948. And I know about, and I'm watching in real time what's happening to the Palestinians in Gaza. And I know that on campuses in American universities and on the streets and from high to low in America and here in Europe and here in Britain, people are saying, wait a minute, I kind of thought Israel were supposed to be the good guys. And that whole appearance has crumbled. And I don't know the extent to which that's an unintended consequence. I mean, it might be part of what I was talking about earlier, about rubbing our noses in it and the mask being off and us just being invited to face reality as it's been shaped for us. But there's definitely been a change in the wind.
So I will say this. You're correct about that, because according to polling, I was the same way as you. I wasn't that well informed about Gaza and Israel and what's been going on with the Palestinians. I would cover some of it, but it wasn't until October 7th that I really was made aware of what the I didn't even know what the Nakba was until then. I didn't really understand that Gaza was a concentration camp, that it was completely occupied, that Israel controlled everything that went in and out, including the human beings and the water and the food. So what that leads to now is that polling in the United States shows that the majority of Americans have turned against Israel, and that even in the Republican Party, the Republicans who are 50 years and younger have turned against Israel. And again, they're doing censorship in the United States. Donald Trump ran on free speech. And the first thing he did was institute censorship. You can't criticize Israel or Zionism. They'll immediately say, oh, you're just like the left would call everything racist for the last 20 years. Now they're calling everything anti-Semitic. And people are fed up with it. All the people that I know that call themselves MAGA, that are Donald Trump supporters, I have a lot of them come to my shows. I travel all around the country. And they're not on board with Israel. They're not on board with Donald Trump's censorship. They're not on board with him kicking out immigrants for writing op-eds critical of Israel's treatment of the Palestinians. They're not on board for that, because those are the immigrants who played by the rules. Those are the people who are doing everything we asked them to do. Those are the people we want to have in this country. And so Donald Trump just instituted his own. And so the censorship always backfires, right? The censorship is what dictators do when they can't control the narrative, because because if they can't control the narrative, the whole the game is over. And I played a clip on my show. Alex Karp, the head of Palantir. If you don't know what Palantir is, it's the people that are instituting the surveillance state for the whole Western world, and they are a CIA operation. And what Palantir, the head of Palantir, said that the fight on college campuses is the game, because if we lose the intellectual fight, meaning the fight over Gaza and Israel, he said we'll never be able to deploy another army in the Western world. So that's why they're coming down so hard with their censorship. That's why they're deporting people who speak out against Zionism. And that's why they're conflating Jews with Zionists. Most of the Jews I know are not Zionists. But the Zionists want you to think that Jews and Zionism are the same thing. They're not the same thing. And that's why I oppose Zionism. Zionism is the modern day Nazism. And most of the Jews I know are against that. And so that's, you're right. There has been a sea change. People have woken up. People have gotten informed about exactly what a maniac, what a modern day Hitler that Benjamin Netanyahu is. He's the reason why we've started all these wars. He's the reason why we went to Iraq. He's the reason why we went to Libya. He's the reason why we were bombing Yemen. He's a big part of why we're in Syria, right? It's called the Greater Israel Project. And now he wants us to do a war with Iran, and he will stop at nothing to get the United States in a war with Iran, including be ready for false flag attacks on the United States installations in the Middle East, or even here in the United States. That's their game plan. And we all know now that 9/11 was not what we were told it was. We all know that Building 7 did not fall down because a plane hit another building a couple of hundred yards away. Building 7, people don't even know there was a Building 7. There was another 47-story building that imploded. It fell directly into its own footprint, exactly like a controlled demolition happens. And you know why that was? Because it was a controlled demolition. Someone in the United States did a controlled demolition on 9/11, and most of the Americans don't even know about it, and they'll never be told the truth about it. When I try to tell the truth about it on YouTube, it gets demonetized, and they suppress it so nobody can see it. Just like when I would tell the truth about COVID, it got suppressed, it got demonetized, and those videos got yanked down off. Why? And so but you're right. There has been a sea change. People have woken up, and I hope more people wake up to what's exactly going on with the United States war machine. And that, again, I can't say it enough, that the United States are the terror. We're not fighting terrorism. The terrorists we claim to be fighting, we've been propping up for the last 20 years. We've been funding them. And probably before that, as Hillary Clinton said, we invented them in Afghanistan because we thought that Mujahideen was going to fight the Russians. We invented Al-Qaeda, and we've been funding them and working with them ever since.
Let's get into 9/11, Jimmy. I watched your recent couple of hours with Richard Gage, who represents 3,000 architects and engineers who have issues, let's say, with the official explanation about what happened. But you had a three-way conversation,
right?
And Richard Gage was giving evidence that I had heard before, but he gave it in a particularly concentrated form across a single appearance with yourself. And I wonder again, like you, I watched 9/11. Well, I thought I watched it live. I remember, Russia. It was a pub actually on Byres Road in Glasgow. I was working at the university at the time, and we went down to where we knew there'd be a television, and we watched, some of that legendary footage. And I believed what I was being told. The explanations that started to come out, on the day, we know who's done it. So Osama bin Laden, but shortly we had passports that were found in the pulverized rubble, and all of the rest of it. I took it hook, line, and sinker. I just believed that it was this terrible terrorist atrocity that had been visited upon the United States of America, unlike anything that had ever happened before. So that now, when I find myself like you, I've been now listening and watching for years. People coming forward tentatively, but I would say with increasing confidence, insisting that there's questions to be asked and the information has been withheld, if not straightforwardly covered up. Ron Johnson is coming forward demanding proper inquiries. Again, it took a lifetime for people to move from thinking that questioning the Lee Harvey Oswald lone shooter of JFK, it took a lifetime for that to go from conspiracy theory to something that so many people now just simply accept, that there was deep state involvement in whatever happened to JFK. And it feels as if something's moving much more quickly in relation to what happened in 9/11, just 20 odd years ago. Do you think, again, it's indicative of the impossibility in the internet age of keeping a lid on palpable, patent cover-ups and untruths?
Well, I think a big part of what's happening with 9/11 is that there's a generation of people who were born after 9/11 now. And now they're in college and now they're older. And so people who didn't live through that trauma, uh, they're more inclined to question the official narrative. I think that's a big part of it, right? So we have a whole generation of people who didn't live through that trauma. And a lot of people who live through that trauma, it's like forbidden. It is taboo to question the establishment narrative, even though it was all a lie. And even the people who served on a 9/11 commission have disavowed the report. And we all know that everybody lied to that 9/11 commission, the military, the Air Force. They all lied to the 9/11 commission. George Bush and Dick Cheney wouldn't even testify to the 9/11 commission under oath. They would do it not under oath, and they did it in secret. They testified in secret to the 9/11 commission. So, that's definitely not the truth of what the establishment narrative was, that two planes flew into two buildings and knocked three buildings down into their own footprint. Buildings, by the way, that were built to withstand a jet flying into them. And, I had Kurt Weldon, a former congressman, on my show recently, and he's a fireman, and he is trying to get to the bottom of it. He was next in line to be the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. And of course, they couldn't allow that to happen because he was questioning the 9/11 official narrative. And so the FBI set him up and made him look like a criminal so he would lose his election, which he did. The guy was next in line to be the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, which is a very powerful position in the United States Congress. And now, ever since then, he's been going around telling the truth. And, he's heard recordings of the firemen on 9/11, that the fire chief was up in the floor where the fire was actually burning. And he said, there's two fires up here. It looks like we'll be able to handle them. 5 minutes later, the entire building fell down. So that doesn't make sense. Of course, it doesn't make sense. Of course, they found thermite, which is the only thing that would blow that steel apart. And the building turned to dust. Why would the steel underneath where the fire was burning, why would that also be weakened? Why would that? None of that makes sense. And I'm not, again, there's not just a couple of engineers. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of engineers in the United States that are questioning and say the 9/11 didn't happen the way they said it did. And so, I mean, that's just like COVID. It's a lie so big, most people's brains can't comprehend it. They can't comprehend that the COVID was actually developed and it was invented by the United States government as a bioweapon, and that it was probably released on purpose, that we were lied to about everything about it, that we were lied to how deadly it was. We were lied to about the infection fatality rate. Like, we were lied to about natural immunity, herd immunity. We were lied to about the effectiveness of the vaccines. We were lied to about lockdowns. We were lied to about masks. We were lied to about school closures and the effects on children. There wasn't a thing that they didn't lie to us about those things. And that lie is so big that still most people's brains, although people have stopped taking the COVID booster by themselves, people were shamed into, now we find out that Yale University, 9 months before the vaccine ever came out, the COVID vaccine, did you hear about this? That they ran these tests on what would be the best propaganda to get people to take the vaccine. Was it humiliation? Was it shame? Was it logic? Was it appeal to authority? They were running these tests months ahead before it ever came out to try to figure out how to get people to take it. I know it seems like I'm mixing stories, but they're not. The stories are the same, that we're run by a cabal of homicidal billionaire maniacs that have lied to us on a scale that most people's brains can't comprehend, from 9/11 to COVID to Syria to Libya to Russiagate. right? It's just we live in a simulation. We don't live in most people will never know what the reality is that they're actually living in. And like General Smedley Butler wrote back in the 30s or 40s, that war is a racket, and only a handful of people actually know what it's for, and only a handful of people get filthy rich off it. So that's what we're living in. But hopefully the internet, like you say, hopefully the internet uh, will help us rise up in a revolution, because I see what's happening in Western Europe. I see Keir Starmer one day screaming that you're a racist if you question the open border policy in the UK, and then just about 5 minutes later, he's screaming that we deserve answers. The people of the UK deserve answers of why they were made victims of an open border policy. So again, we need the same cabal of homicidal, psychopathic billionaires that are running the United States are also running the entire Western world. And right now they're rigging elections. Like they just rigged the Romanian election. So if you're against war, they're going to make you seem you're extreme right. I'm called a right winger now because I oppose war. I'm called a right winger because I oppose censorship. I'm called a right winger now because I'm for my body, my choice. I'm for bodily autonomy. These are all things that lefties are supposed to be hold near and dear as a value. And now they've completely flipped it. They've brainwashed Americans and most of the Western world. We've become brain dead and brainwashed, and we just go along. It's again, I hope. I saw a video recently from a Chinese person saying what America doesn't need a change in government. America needs, and they don't need tariffs. What America needs is a real revolution. And I've been saying that since they cheated Bernie Sanders in 2016.
Yeah, I have to every morning when I wake up, I have to go and find out what I am now. Because I've been a granny killer. I've been an anti-vaxxer. I've been a COVID denier. I've been a COVIDiot. I've been a Putin apologist. It's a rolling program of defamation. I just have to remind myself every now and again how it is I'm being caricatured. But you mentioned that you pay attention to what's happening on my side of the Atlantic, and I know you're coming to the UK because I'm coming to see you when you come to Glasgow. I'm going to come and see you there. I wonder, you presumably with UK audiences in mind, you're perhaps paying even more attention at the moment to what's going on here. I wonder what kind of topics might be giving you fodder for your shows in the UK. What about the madness that's unfolding here has particularly captured your comedic imagination?
Well, we've been through the very similar things. We've been taken over by the war machine. The people who stand up to the authoritarianism of COVID, who stand up to open borders experiments. And the point of those open borders is to keep us divided. That's because the fear of the establishment and the oligarchy is that we come together like we did during Brexit, like people came together at Brexit and voted out their garbage. They can't have that anymore. Democracy is bad for the establishment in the UK, in the United States. They all talk about democracy. They pay fealty to democracy. They know the words of democracy, as Chris had just said, but none of them. But they're actually the most anti-democratic people. Look what just happened in Romania, right? So that what they don't want is they don't want to have Brexit happen. They don't want to have people actually come together. That's the point of that. So the same things that we're going through in the West, right? They took away our bodily autonomy. They took away our free speech. And they always, like all dictators, they say they're doing it for the benefit of us. They're protecting us from the bad people and the misinformers. The misinformers are the government. The misinformers are the establishment media. Those are the misinformers, not randos like you and me on the internet. So we're the truth tellers, and that's the things that I'll be talking about when I come to the UK. But of course, I'll be doing it in a humorous way, and I'll be talking about how they did all this and how the people who pretend to, and of course, climate change, right? That's one of my favorite topics now, because all the people telling us that I have to, live in a storage shelter, live in a 15-minute city, driving an electric scooter, hitting the bugs that hit me on the face, and I'm they're all buying gigantic yachts and beachfront property, even though they say the sea levels are rising, and they're all flying around the world in private jets. One private jet flight burns more carbon than my car does in my lifetime. So these people are liars. These people are narrative controllers, and they want us to make sacrifices so we're easily controlled. And believe me, that's the point of open borders. It's to suppress your wages and keep you fighting amongst yourself. So poor working people or regular are now turning their attention away from the oligarchy and the establishment, and they're turning it towards immigrants who are even more desperate and poorer than they are. So we can fight amongst each other instead of coming together to fight amongst the establishment. That's the only thing that scares them, is people from the left and the right realizing we've been manipulated by the same handful of oligarchs to hate each other. And I'm not going to fall into that trap. They fall into that trap. In the United States, it's unbelievable. You see people, well-intentioned people who think they're fighting fascism, and they end up hating half the country. They talk about Donald Trump and his supporters. No, how about we just talk about the oligarchy that's actually controlling everything? How about we talk about the powerful, and we stop demonizing the powerless, which is your neighbor? They want me to hate my neighbor, and instead of joining with my neighbor. Keep that in mind. If you find yourself being angry at someone lower on the economic ladder than you, you're being manipulated by someone higher on the economic ladder than you. Don't ever forget that. And I understand, immigration is a problem, but the immigrant himself is not your enemy. The people who are causing those people to be desperate enough, which is the war machine, when they destroyed Iraq, when they destroyed Libya, when they're destroying Afghanistan and Syria, and creating these, and Yemen and Somalia and the Sudan, and they're creating these refugees. That's on purpose. And they're making those people desperate. And here in the West, they're doing it to Venezuela and Cuba. And so they're doing these economic sanctions and doing war. And so that is to create people desperate enough to leave their own country to go to another country so we can have division. And that just gives more control to the establishment and the oligarchy. And so that's a big part of my message. And right now, it's amazing what they just did in Romania, and they call it democracy. Isn't that wild? So anybody who the establishment is afraid of winning an election, they kick off the ballot. They tried to kick Donald Trump off the ballot here in the United States, right? 4 different states tried to kick him off the ballot. So that's this. So it's the same play they're doing over and over and over.
You talk rightly about the people being invited to overlook the way in which the millions are displaced. You look at Africa. Recently here there's been stories about the presence in Burkina Faso of the leader of what is described as a military junta, Ibrahim Traore. Now, whoever he is, whatever he is, he's gaining huge popular support in Burkina Faso. And he's insisting that France, who has traditionally milked Burkina Faso for its gold and anything else that isn't nailed down, he's insisting that the wealth of Burkina Faso will now not go to France. And he wants to now make of him what you will, but you've only got to look at the way the Western media immediately characterises Ibrahim Traore. And it basically sets him up for assassination. We have to get rid of this guy. And it's only because an African person has had the temerity to stand up in an African country and say this African country should not be being milked for everything it's got by a European country. This is unacceptable. And so he automatically has to be demonised. But for me, there was something hugely... poignant's the wrong word. Hugely revelatory. We just had VE Day, the anniversary of Victory in Europe, And I grew up being told at school that World War II was fought to defeat the Nazis. That was the whole point, and that Poland had been invaded, and that by God we were going to make sure that democracy and freedom was returned to those Polish people from whom it had been wrested and now was being crushed under the heel of the jackboot and all the rest of it. And of course, what happened by the end of World War II? Poland was just thrown under the bus, along with half of Europe that was thrown to the Soviet, and millions of people were just consigned, to the gulag and to the misery and all of the rest of it. And Operation Paperclip lifted thousands of Nazis, Werner Braun among them, so that America could pursue its ambitions in terms of rocket technology. But when I say something revelatory, that we honoured Ukrainian Nazis on VE Day in London, in Whitehall at the Cenotaph. And former Prime Minister Boris Johnson had previously welcomed Azov Battalion to a private members club, members thereof to a private members club in London, where he celebrated the Nazis of the Azov Battalion as being heroes. And we had already seen by that point Justin Trudeau and Volodymyr Zelensky giving a standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament to an actual veteran of the SS. And he was being applauded with clenched fist salutes for having fought the Russians in World War II. Russia at that, having been allies in World War II. But celebrating Nazis at VE Day in London, I thought, well, that's it. The game's over. Any authority, any reality, any truth that there ever was about who won the Second World War just disappeared like a heat haze at that point.
Think about the irony. The irony is that right now they're heavily censoring anyone who, and especially I saw a news report in Germany how the censorship is in overdrive over there, and it's supposedly to protect people from anti-Semitism. Well, the same government that are censoring their own people, which is the hallmark of a dictators, right, on authoritarians, that when, as Bobby Kennedy said, when in history have the people doing the censoring ever turned out to be the good guys? Never. And at the same time, they're censoring their own citizens and turning them into criminals for their speech, for their rightful criticism of what's happening in Israel, Gaza. They're calling them anti-Semites. That's those same governments are giving money and arms and rockets to literal Nazis in Ukraine. They're the ones who are actually in bed with the Nazis. They're the ones who are actually the anti-Semites. They're the ones who are the fascists that they say they're saving us from. And, you talk about what's happening in Burkina Faso and how they're demonizing the leader there. Well, that's the same old play. And why? Because he wants to kick France out and he wants to keep the natural resources for their people. And that's exactly what happened. If you go back, how did Iran become a theocracy? Well, they had a democracy. And in 1953, the CIA and Mossadegh was the leader of Iran. And he wanted to keep the oil and their natural resources for their own people. Well, we said, no, that's our oil, and you're going to give it to us, and you're going to give it to British Petroleum. And so the United States did a coup, and they overthrew Mossadegh, and then they installed a strongman puppet dictator called the Shah of Iran, which then creates what the CIA calls blowback, meaning the people of Iran overthrew the puppet of the United States, and they installed a right-wing theocracy. And that's what we're living with till this day. And that's because of what the United States did. It's the same story. The same thing in Syria. Same thing in Libya, right? So Gaddafi wanted to create a currency for not only his country, but all of Africa, which threatened the euro and threatened the United States dollar hegemony. And we can't have that. And so we make up this story that he's killing his own people. And what did we do? We went in there and we overthrew his country. We got rid of him, and we replaced it with a failed state with open slave markets. We poisoned their water. Gaddafi had created deserts into farmland and they called it the eighth wonder of the world. How he did that with his system of waterways, and the United States and France and the UK went in and bombed those waterways with depleted uranium-tipped bombs, which poisoned their water. So it's the same story over and over, like we did in Iran, like we did in Libya, like we did in Syria, we're doing now in Africa. We're never going to that's the same game. So whoever the West wants to overthrow because we want to steal their natural resources, we turn them into a bad guy. And that's exactly, again, the bad guys are the United States. The terrorists is the United States, and the West and NATO. NATO is the terrorist. And I hope people wake up to that, and I hope I don't get arrested when I come to the UK.
I sincerely hope not. I'll be standing there beside you in shackles. I wonder at the extent to which our the powers that ought not to be, they must think that the populations of the West have some kind of collective amnesia. Or that we have some kind of mass Alzheimer's dementia, that no one remembers anything. It's as if they can say goodbye to tomorrow and sit down in the armchair with us today and just tell us something, and we won't remember, we won't connect anything up. that whatever playbook they're using, and give the devil his due, it has worked. It's been very effective for decades. But surely by now they must be seeing that it's played out. This game of 7 wars in 5 years, one after the other, only Iran remaining outstanding. And even though people are standing on the rooftops shouting about the fact that we can see what you're doing, you've still got the neocons and the rest going through all moving heaven and earth in order to make something happen that enables the seventh of 7 wars to get underway. But I wonder, do you think I've already mentioned that JFK? Do you think in any meaningful way the United States of America has had a legitimate president ever since? Do you think?
No.
Do you think JFK was the last, and everything that's happened since has been something else?
Yes, correct. And as soon as one of those presidents gets a little bit out of line, they get rid of him. Like what now it's becoming clear. Tucker Carlson has talked about this. That it was a hit job. It was a deep state hit job to get rid of President Nixon. And the two reporters, the reporter that was credited with that came right from the Naval Intelligence. Right? His first story was given to him at the was Watergate. I mean, that just doesn't happen. So now we realize what this is. So no, I don't think there has been any president that we've had since JFK has to be vetted by the deep state, and if the deep state does not approve of them, and that was I think that was the big scare about Donald Trump. Donald Trump was not the approved candidate of the deep state and the oligarchs, and that's why they had to do Russiagate. They had to immediately try to discredit his presidency, which they did, and try to render him ineffectual, which they did. And so they did not see him being able to, so he didn't get reelected. And that 2020 election, you're not allowed to question. So anything you're not allowed to question, just like the Seth Rich murder, just like the COVID narrative, just like the vaccines, just like 9/11, whenever you're not allowed to question something, there's some deep state fuckery happening. And so, there's been, so Donald Trump was the one guy, and same thing with Brexit, those happened at the same time. And it really put a chill into the Western oligarchy. And so they had to make sure that democracy never happened again. And then Donald Trump. So now Donald Trump, you see him, is he really going against the deep state? He's got his 2 FBI guys now saying that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. He's funding Benjamin Netanyahu's genocide in Gaza. Let's see. The Ukraine war is still going. He's still funding Ukraine. He said he wouldn't. He said he would end it in 24 hours. He bombed the hell. He continued Joe Biden's bombing campaign of Yemen, something that Tulsi Gabbard said was unconstitutional, something that he said before he got elected he wouldn't do. He would. So I think the deep state is still firmly in control. And it's, go ahead.
A question that I have. Why do you think these guys get into it at all? Donald Trump, before his first foray into the White House, he was a very wealthy man, with Melania and his golf and Mar-a-Lago and all of the rest of it. Why would you? He's a smart man. Why would you get into that? Bobby Kennedy, RFK Jr., again, very successful, all the money, great life. Why would you allow yourself to get drawn into the meat grinder of US politics when anyone looking at it from the outside surely sees it as a zero-sum game, really, because of what we're just talking about? That not since JFK there hasn't actually been a bona fide president of the United States of America. How do they get shoehorned into these dreadfully uncomfortable situations in the first place?
Well, I think Donald Trump has a big ego, like any billionaire does, and he was humiliated and insulted repeatedly by Barack Obama, and famously at the correspondence dinner, he did it right in his face, and the entire room was laughing and mocking Donald Trump. And Barack Obama was saying that Donald Trump will never be president, and everybody was laughing. And so I think that's why he ran for president, to prove him wrong. And I don't think he actually expected to be president. And then he did, and it was like a surprise. And then they did all the lawfare against him. They did Russiagate. They dragged his name through the mud in ways that were unimaginable to me before Russiagate. And they then imprisoned all the people around him, including Steve Bannon and his lawyers. They impeached him twice. They staged a fake insurrection on the Capitol on January 6th, and they tried to criminalize him and his following. And so I think it's just his natural big ego revenge gene that got activated, like anybody's would. And so that's what I think. I think he wanted payback, and I think he wanted to stick his thumb in the eye of the people who maligned him with Russiagate, with January 6th, with everything. And that's my armchair psychology on Donald Trump. That's now Bobby Kennedy. I think Bobby Kennedy has actually been a force for good his entire life. And same thing happened to him. They completely ruined his reputation. They made him out to be a crazy person when he was saying truthful things about vaccines. And all he wanted was the actual safety data and the safety tests to be performed on vaccines that are performed on any other drug. And of course, the mainstream media, which is now owned by Big Pharma and 70% funded by them, turned him into a pariah and a crazy person. And so I think he also wanted to gain power so he could clear his name and get back at. So I think it's those two things. The people have been, completely maligned and tarnished and slandered by the establishment, and they want to get power so they could clear their name and have a little bit of payback. That's my armchair psychology, and I also think RFK would like to do good at the HHS. I think he actually has done good, but it's obvious that he's not in control, that he's answering to someone bigger than him, and that's why the COVID vaccine is still on the schedule for children. And that's why it's still, but he's doing a lot of good things. Like he stopped doing the advertising campaign for the flu shot, right? He stopped that immediately. That was in the first week he was in, that's one of the first things he did. He's getting rid of the food dye that causes cancer, that it's only allowed in our food in the United States and not allowed in other countries. So that is also happening. He's actually instituting safety testing for vaccines going forward. So there's a lot of good things that are happening. And I think that if you're asking me to my theory and my armchair psychology take, that's why I think Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy wanted power.
But the price they pay, you walk on knowing that you're going to get such a punch in the face. It just why you would sacrifice, risk what they've got, what they've had. They are, I'm sure Bobby Kennedy in particular is very well, wants to do good, as you say, and I dare say Donald Trump did want to, throw a custard pie back at those who were ridiculing him and all of the rest of it. But my goodness, what a price they pay for getting involved. Jimmy Dore, I'm watching the clock. I see it's an hour we've been chatting. You've been very generous. Thank you so much. I love talking to you. I love listening to you. And I'm very much looking forward to meeting you in person next month in Glasgow, the second city of the empire. And so until then, Jimmy Dore, thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's always great to talk to you, and I'm really proud to call you a friend, and it's just amazing to know somebody like you and to see someone like you with the courage you have. And I hope I hope God protects you.
Bless you, Jimmy. I hope so too. I'll see you soon.
Okay,
lots of love, Jimmy. Soon.